Iran's defiant stand. The untouchable fortress in a world of enemies in the heart of the Middle East, where flames of conflict burn eternally, one nation stands as both a pariah and a powerhouse: Iran. A land blessed with the world's fourth largest oil reserves and second largest natural gas deposits, Iran should be a beacon of prosperity, its people basking in wealth and stability. Yet, fate has dealt a cruel hand. Decades of war, crippling international sanctions, and a relentless barrage of enemies have plunged Iran into its darkest economic crisis in history. Factories rust, foreign investors flee, and the nation's oil, once its lifeblood, finds few buyers, as only a handful of countries dare defy U.S. sanctions. Iran, by all accounts, is a nation on its knees. But here lies the paradox that has the world transfixed. Despite its poverty, despite its isolation, Iran remains an untouchable fortress, a regional superpower that even the mightiest military powers, America, Israel, and their allies, cannot subdue. How does a nation surrounded by enemies, battered by sanctions, and teetering on the edge of collapse maintain such defiance? The answer lies in a lethal combination of geography, strategy, and sheer audacity. In this explosive exposé, we unravel the secrets of Iran's survival, its web of influence, and the ticking time bomb that could set the Middle East ablaze: its nuclear ambitions. Buckle up. This is the story of a nation that refuses to break. To understand Iran's resilience, one must first look at the land itself, a natural fortress designed by the gods of war. Iran's borders are a labyrinth of mountains and deserts, a terrain so unforgiving that history's greatest empires have shattered against it. To the west lies the Zagros Mountains, a 1,600-kilometer wall of jagged peaks stretching from the Strait of Hormuz to the borders of Iraq, Turkey, and Armenia. These mountains, soaring to 4,400 meters, are a nightmare for any invading army. Exhaustion claims soldiers before they even reach the battlefield. To the north, the Alborz Mountains, with peaks reaching 5,600 meters, guard the Caspian Sea coast, while to the east, a chain of rugged ranges merges into the Makran Mountains in the south. Together, they form a near-impenetrable shield around Iran's heartland. But the defenses don't end there. Within Iran's interior lie two of the world's most hostile deserts: the Dashti Kavir Assault Desert with treacherous quicksand-like bogs, and the Dashti Lut, where surface temperatures have exceeded 70 degrees Celsius, earning it the title of the hottest place on Earth. These are not mere landscapes. They are death traps for invaders. History bears witness to Iran's impregnability. In 633 CE, the Arab Caliphate, fresh from unifying the Middle East, invaded Iran but faltered against its brutal terrain. Centuries later, the Ottoman Empire, one of the most formidable powers of its time, breached Iran's borders but was forced to retreat, crippled by the impossibility of sustaining supply lines across the mountains. From Alexander the Great to modern superpowers, Iran's geography has been its ultimate shield, a fortress that has kept its borders largely intact for centuries. Iran's modern saga of defiance began with a single, seismic event: the 1979 Islamic Revolution. For 38 years, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi ruled Iran with an iron fist, propped up by American support. His regime, marked by opulence for the elite and repression for the masses, fueled widespread resentment. By 1978, the streets of Tehran erupted in protests, and in 1979, the Shah was overthrown, replaced by a theocratic regime led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born, a state where religion and politics fused into a radical new order. The revolution didn't just topple a monarchy, it set Iran on a collision course with the West. When the U.S. granted asylum to the exiled Shah, Iranian students stormed the American embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. The crisis humiliated the U.S., severed diplomatic ties, and triggered a cascade of sanctions that froze over $10 billion in Iranian assets. Overnight, Iran became a global outcast, its enmity with America cemented. But the revolution's shockwaves didn't stop at America. Israel, America's closest ally in the region, became Iran's archenemy. The ideological clash between Shia Islam and Judaism, coupled with Iran's support for Palestinian causes, turned the two nations into mortal foes. Khomeini's fiery rhetoric, calling for Israel's destruction, and Iran's alleged sponsorship of anti-Semitic attacks in countries like Argentina and Bulgaria deepened the rift. To Iran's leaders, Israel was not just a rival, but a Western implant in the heart of the Islamic world, a symbol of everything they despised. Iran's isolation wasn't limited to the West. Even its Muslim neighbors viewed it with suspicion and hostility. The Sunni-Shia divide, a schism dating back to the 7th century, fractured the Islamic world into two camps. Iran, the preeminent Shia power, found itself at odds with Sunni-majority nations like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the Gulf states. Saudi Arabia, in particular, saw Iran's revolutionary zeal as a direct threat to its monarchy and regional dominance. The term Iranian threat first emerged not in Hebrew but in Arabic, coined by Saudi leaders wary of Iran's ambitions. The 1980 Iran-Iraq War epitomized this regional enmity. When Saddam Hussein, Iraq's Sunni dictator, seized power in 1979, just months after Khomeini's rise, he saw a weakened Iran as an opportunity. Believing the Islamic Republic was still reeling from its revolution, Saddam launched a full-scale invasion in September 1980, aiming to cripple his neighbor and seize its oil-rich territories. What followed was one of the 20th century's bloodiest conflicts, an 8-year war of attrition that claimed nearly 1 million lives. Iraq unleashed ballistic missiles and chemical weapons, but Iran's terrain, those same mountains and deserts, proved an insurmountable barrier. By 1988, the war ended in a stalemate, with neither side gaining ground. The United Nations brokered a ceasefire, but the scars of the conflict shaped Iran's psyche, fueling its determination to never again be vulnerable. Unable to rely on conventional alliances, Iran turned to unconventional warfare, building a network of proxy forces that has become its greatest weapon. Known as the Axis of Resistance, this shadowy alliance of militias stretches across the Middle East, from Lebanon to Yemen. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthi rebels in Yemen are armed, funded, and trained by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. These proxies serve as Iran's fists, striking its enemies, chiefly America and Israel, while allowing Tehran to maintain plausible deniability. Hezbollah, in particular, is Iran's crown jewel. With tens of thousands of rockets and missiles, it is arguably the world's most powerful non-state military force. During the 2006 Lebanon War, Hezbollah held its own against Israel, earning Iran's admiration and cementing its role as Tehran's enforcer. If Iran were ever directly attacked, Hezbollah could unleash a barrage on Israel, a deterrent that keeps Tel Aviv on edge. But the axis of resistance is not without cracks. The 2023 Gaza war devastated Hamas, while Hezbollah suffered heavy losses in clashes with Israel. Syria's Bashar al-Assad, a key Iranian ally, fell in 2024, severing Iran's land corridor to the Mediterranean and complicating its arms smuggling routes. These setbacks have weakened Iran's proxy network, leaving it vulnerable at a time when its enemies are circling. If Iran's proxies are its fists, its nuclear program is its sword, a weapon that could reshape the Middle East and the world. The seeds of Iran's nuclear ambitions were sown during the Iran-Iraq War, when the horrors of chemical attacks convinced Tehran that only a supreme deterrent could ensure its survival. By the 1990s, Iran was secretly developing nuclear infrastructure, claiming it was for civilian energy. The West, led by the U.S., was skeptical, fearing Iran aimed to build a bomb. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, offered a glimmer of hope. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions relief. But in 2018, President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from the deal, reimposing sanctions and pushing Iran to accelerate its nuclear program. By 2025, Iran is closer than ever to nuclear capability, with enriched uranium stockpiles and advanced centrifuges raising alarms in Washington and Tel Aviv. Israel, in particular, views a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat. In October 2024, Israel launched unprecedented strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, missile factories, and military bases, aiming to cripple Tehran's capabilities. The attack was a gamble. Israel's air force outmaneuvered Iran's defenses, But the strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program entirely. Iran's response was restrained, but the message was clear. Any further escalation could spiral into all-out war. The nuclear question remains a tightrope. Iran insists its program is peaceful, but its rhetoric, death to Israel, death to America, undermines its credibility. If Iran were to abandon its nuclear ambitions in exchange for sanctions relief, it could revive its economy. Recent overtures to negotiate with the West suggest Tehran may be softening its stance, a sign of weakness or pragmatism depending on one's perspective. But as long as the nuclear specter looms, Iran holds a card that keeps its enemies at bay. Beyond mountains and militias, Iran wields another weapon, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway, just 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, is the lifeline of global energy, carrying 20% of the world's oil. Flanked by Iran to the north and Oman to the south, the strait is under Tehran's watchful eye. Iran's navy, equipped with missiles, mines, and fast attack boats, could disrupt or block the strait in a crisis, sending oil prices skyrocketing and crippling economies worldwide. Iran has flexed this muscle before. In 2019, it seized foreign tankers and attacked oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, signaling its ability to destabilize global markets. Closing the strait would hurt Iran's own economy, but the threat alone gives Tehran leverage. Any military strike on Iran risks triggering this doomsday scenario, a deterrent that even the U.S. Navy, the world's most powerful, must respect. Iran's story is one of contradictions. Its geography makes it unconquerable, yet it traps Iran in a cycle of isolation. Its proxies extend its reach, but they drain its resources and provoke retaliation. Its nuclear program is a shield, but it invites preemptive strikes. And its control of the Strait of Hormuz is a sword, but one that cuts both ways. For centuries, Iran has defied empires and superpowers, its mountains and deserts standing as silent sentinels. But survival is not prosperity. Decades of mismanagement, corruption, and sanctions have left Iran's economy in tatters. Unemployment soars, inflation rages, and the rial is nearly worthless. The regime's obsession with external enemies, America, Israel, Saudi Arabia, has come at the cost of internal stability. Protests erupt periodically, with citizens demanding jobs, food, and freedom, only to be crushed by the IRGC. Iran's leaders face a crossroads. They can double down on defiance, risking war and further isolation, or they can negotiate, trading nuclear ambitions for economic salvation. The latter would require swallowing pride, a bitter pill for a regime built on revolutionary zeal. Meanwhile, Israel and the U.S. watch closely, their patience wearing thin. Saudi Arabia and its Gulf allies, emboldened by Iran's setbacks, are pushing for regime change in Tehran, while Russia and China offer limited support, wary of being drawn into a Middle Eastern quagmire. Does geography determine a nation's fate? In Iran's case, the answer is a resounding yes and no. Its mountains, deserts, and strategic position have made it a fortress, surviving invasions and sanctions that would have broken lesser nations. But geography also confines Iran, limiting its ability to project power conventionally and forcing it to rely on proxies and threats. The land that protects Iran also isolates it, a double-edged sword that defines its destiny. Iran's story is not just about terrain or oil or nukes. It is about a people caught in a grand game of survival, led by a regime that thrives on defiance but struggles to deliver prosperity. As the Middle East teeters on the brink of another war, Iran remains the region's wild card, a nation that cannot be ignored, subdued, or trusted. Its enemies are many, its allies few, but its will to endure is unbreakable. Will Iran emerge as the Middle East's undisputed hegemon, or will it crumble under the weight of its own ambitions? The world watches, breathless, as the fortress stands defiant, its fate hanging in the balance. One thing is certain, Iran's next move will shake the globe.